We are, as I mentioned earlier, very lucky today to be joined by Michelle O'Neill. Michelle has been the Vice President of Sinn Féin since 2018, and until recently was the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland. We are looking forward to learning more about developments around that change, as well as how plans are shaping up for what may yet be another change in early May. We are all so thankful to you for joining us today and for providing us with a briefing on some of the latest information. We have a pretty tight schedule and many topics to cover, so I'd like to jump right in if we can. Can you begin by giving us an update on the work Sinn Féin is doing to create the necessary conditions for the process of reunifying Ireland, the latest on the Irish and British governments, as well as how Sinn Féin is driving and managing change?
Thank you very much, and good evening from me. Good morning to you some, good afternoon. Great to see old friends and you. You're all very welcome to this evening's discussion, and it is powerful for us to see our good friends from the United States and Canada coming along this evening just to hear, well, to get an update, but also to have that conversation around the things that obviously you want to know a bit more about. We're very grateful to our friends because we know that you have a vested interest in our peace accord and everything that's been achieved here over the course of almost 25 years. And before I talk a wee bit about that, I just want to start by obviously given ongoing developments, the attack on Ukraine. I just want to start the meeting by obviously offering and extending our solidarity to the people of Ukraine, and all of us that value, our freedom, our sovereignty, our right to self-determination of free peoples. We only can look on in horror at what's happening to the people of Ukraine as we speak, and it's just devastating to see those things. So I think the unified voice in terms of the European response, the American response, it's just been crucially important that we hear that strong condemnation of Putin's war on those people. So we watch with interest, but even more so, we advocate for solutions, and we advocate for support for the Ukrainian people. So just to start the meeting with those comments just now. So I suppose I just wanted to take you through just a whistle-stop tour maybe of recent developments, things that have been happening, but just to set it all in context, I think it's really important. In about 6 weeks' time, we're going to mark the 24th anniversary of the signing of the peace agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, something that we hold very dear. And for those of us old enough to remember where we've come from, when you think back to then, the darkest days of conflict, to where we are today, it's absolutely transformative. It's incredible to watch, it's incredible to live through. And it's incredible for our today's generation and for future generations to come after us. So I think the anniversary always gives an opportunity to take stock on that progress that's been made, to look at the opportunities, but also to look at the challenges that we have. But unfortunately, friends, the one thing that I would say is that our Good Friday Agreement is under huge threat. It's under huge threat for a myriad of reasons, not least the implications of Brexit, not least the relationship between the DUP and the Tories in England. All those things are working together to undermine the Good Friday Agreement. We always said from day one that Brexit wasn't compatible with the Good Friday Agreement, and that remains our position. So all those things are in the mix, but in recent weeks, you'll know that our partners in government, the DUP, resigned their First Minister, and in effect then removed me also from office, given the nature of the joint office. And they've walked away in protest at a protocol, an international agreement that was reached to give us some mitigation against the worst impact of Brexit. And it did three things. It protected the all-island economy, it ensured we had that trade ongoing, it protected the Good Friday Agreement itself. And it was so crucially important that we achieved that. And it was the support, I have to say, of our friends in America, it was the support of our friends elsewhere that fought very hard to fight for the protection of the Good Friday Agreement. But yet no, the DUP have brought about the hardest possible Brexit. They are fighting back against the protocol, and they have walked out of our local government, our local executive, and left us high and dry and unable to take decisions that impact on people's lives, about the health service and education and all the things that we want to be working on. This latest move by the DUP comes in the aftermath of also pulling out of North-South meetings, which are a crucial part of the three parts of the Good Friday Agreement, the relationships in the north itself, the relationships north to south on our island, and then the relationships east to west. And all three have to work together. You can't pick and choose which ones you choose to work. But the DUP chose to stop attending those north-south ministerial meetings. That ended up in legal challenges. And the High Court here, the law courts have all ruled that is unlawful. Their actions are unlawful. However, they haven't went as far as to take action because they don't want to enter into the political sphere. So that all, in my opinion, amounts to a destabilising effect. It amounts to an attack on the Good Friday Agreement. And that's not something that any of us want to see. I make no apology whatsoever. I'm sure neither do anybody in this call to say that we want to protect the Good Friday Agreement at all turns. It served us well in that transformative years to this point where we are today. So we have to fight tooth and nail to protect it. And unfortunately, what we have at this moment in time are the DUP conflating the issue of identity politics and people's identities, conflating that with the issue of the protocol whenever the two things are not related. The issue of identity, the issue of the constitutional position will only be resolved whenever the people here decide that it's going to change. And that's what we advocate every day, and see no contradiction actually in governing, being in the institutions in the north, whilst advocating our view for something better, the change that's going to come, the constitutional change. So it's ridiculous, I think, that that's the approach the DUP have taken. However, it is the approach they have taken, and they are constantly repeating that mantra. So that leaves us in a position where we're coming very quickly towards an election, and that election will be fought on the 5th of May. It's going to be a seismic election. It's a really, really huge game changer election. We take nothing for granted. We will work really hard for every single vote that we can achieve, and it will be a vote to protect the Good Friday Agreement. It will be a vote for change, because Sinn Féin are leading change across this island, you know, from Tyrone, where I live, you know, to Cork, to Dublin, everywhere in between. We are leading change across this island. And this election, for the first time ever, and I think you have to keep saying this to let it sink in for people, for the first time ever, this election offers Republicans, nationalists, people in the 6 counties, for the first time ever, the opportunity to make history and return a Sinn Féin First Minister for the first time. So that's the big, you know, the big prize, I suppose, in terms of this election, because so many things have changed. And whenever we talk about change, we don't mean just tweaking around the edges, we mean fundamental change. So the very basis of the northern state, the inbuilt unionist majority, is gone, and that won't return. That's the electoral majority, that won't return. And that's why whenever we talk about change, we have to put it in the context of, it has to be about changing for the better. It has to be something better for all of us, not Republicans, not nationalists alone, all of us, every single person who shares this island. So that's why we know that this election is going to be crucially important. And what we think and what we understand and what we know and our experience tells us that our system of governance is challenging. I have to tell you folks, it's very difficult every day. A 5-party coalition coming from very different ideological standpoints. It's very challenging, but it's worth it. It's worth it because it's the Good Friday Agreement outworking. It's worth it because we must govern together, deliver good public services for people, tackle the things that weigh heavily on people's minds every day. And there's no contradiction to do that, as I said, and then also articulate our view for a new and agreed Ireland. So we're going to fight this election with everything we've got. We're going to ask the public for their support. And then we're going to come to the other side of the election. And here is the next, I suppose, offering from the unionist leaders, where they have now, both the leader of the DUP and the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party have both failed to declare if they would serve as a Deputy First Minister with the Sinn Féin First Minister. Now, I'm 45 years of age. I've been about the peace process all of my adult life. How, in what system in the world is that reasonable for anybody to tell me that we aren't able to hold either of those posts? This is democracy. If the public decide that they want to return Sinn Féin to be the largest party, then we should occupy the position of First Minister and serve alongside our ministerial colleagues and whoever is returned as the second largest party. So the sentiment of nationalists need not apply is absolutely ridiculous, or even more so than that, the sentiment of democracy on the terms of unionism only is just, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for my children. It's not acceptable for me, and I'm sure it's not acceptable for all of you. So we often hear from the likes of Jeffrey Donaldson that it'll be difficult for his party to serve as a Deputy First Minister to a Sinn Féin First Minister if, you know, and also they've added to the mix that if the protocol is not resolved, that'll be another difficulty for them. We hear this day and daily about, you know, no to the protocol, no to the Nationalist First Minister, no to the Nationalist Minister holding the Justice Ministry, no to language rights. Like the days of no, 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 or never, never, never are gone. And that's just not the space that we are in. The facts are that the balance of power has changed at Stormont. It's shifted irreversibly, and those that hanker for that past, you know, those days are gone, as I've said, and we need to realise that we have to be all about going forward. We have to also be very clear, and I'm saying to you all tonight, we'll not be renegotiating the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement, there was blood, sweat and tears put into achieving that peace agreement, and we need to protect it at all costs, and we'll not be shifting the goalposts, if you like, to suit unionism before the election or after the election. The Good Friday Agreement is the democratic norm and the principles in which we must adhere to. So we work to get the best election result. We work to form a government on the other side of that. We will continue to work to serve the public in the best way we can, because I and Mary Lou and myself have previously described this space that we're in as the decade of opportunity, and we absolutely believe that. We believe that there are huge opportunity ahead of us to abandon what's been before, to do things better, to be all about health, housing, jobs. How do you put a roof over people's head? How do you put money in their pockets? How do you make sure young people have opportunity? How do you ensure that the past is assured, that the past, which was divided, is not the norm for today's generation? How do you ensure that it's a shared future, a better future, one where we all can live side by side? And there's been huge strides forward in that. And it's not just us saying that, and I'll probably just finish on this because I'm sure you want to get to questions, but it's not just Sinn Féin who are saying that it's now time for the big conversation about the constitutional change, which is in the Good Friday Agreement. It's not something we're, you know, plucking out of the air. It's what I voted for in 1998. It's what many people voted for in 1998. But there are so many people now engaged in this conversation about the future. It's so inspiring. And people who previously perhaps hadn't spoken about it are now so comfortable to speak about it. And that's a good thing. And we should encourage that debate and conversation. One of Ireland's most foremost kind of economic thinkers is a man by the name of David McWilliams. And last year he talked about, from an economic point of view, he said that it makes no sense for an island this small to be divided. And he's only one of a growing body of opinion from right across all different walks of life, you know, academia, economists, all different people from all different perspectives are coming forward. And they're not people who are motivated by Republican or nationalist sentiment. They're people who think it just makes sense. It's clever. It's the right way to go. And we're very much wanting to work with everybody, with the people, with the business community, with the labour movement, with the academics, with everybody who think tanks, you know, everybody who wants to get engaged in this conversation. So what we're asking for is planning, preparation, do the groundwork, do the legwork, talk about the health service, talk about education, talk about all those things. And that's why our ask, if you like, of the Irish government in this moment in time is to plan. Let's have the Citizens' Assembly. Let's allow our public to have this conversation. And let's not have the same dangers that happened with Brexit, where people were asked to take a decision on something whenever they didn't have all the information in terms of the outworkings of it. So we don't want to fall foul of that. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, I think it's still, despite challenges, it's actually quite an exciting time. There's lots of work to do. We're up for doing the work. We've got a very strong activist base. We've got fantastic support from people like yourselves, and, you know, long may that continue and grow. But it's all to play for. We are in the era of change, huge change. It's all coming in one direction, but we don't take anything for granted. We know we have to work hard for it, and with your support, I have no doubt that we can get there. So Greg, maybe I'll just leave it there and maybe open it up then for questions.
That's great, Michelle. Thank you so much. The decade of opportunity is palpable, and it is certainly enough to fuel our continued support and engagement. Really grateful for that update. It would be nice for us to turn to some of the topics and questions from folks who submitted them when they registered. As you're hearing our discussion and answers, if you have further questions on the line, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that and see if we can save time at the end to circle back there. The most popular topic among the submitted questions was planning for unity, and it's really where you just were speaking there towards the end of your update. We heard from Bridget Thompson, Taylor McGrath, Martin Burns. Many folks wrote in specifically asking about the pathway to Irish unity. How do you convince those opposed? And what will health, education, and governance look like in United Ireland? Can you speak to those ideas?
I can, and I think they're probably the most common questions that people ask. So even if you take the health service, for example, people in the north have the National Health Service, and people in the south of Ireland actually pay for healthcare in some ways. So people often ask that question. But I think the point that I was making about we need to plan, and we need to prepare, and we need to have that conversation. So from our part, when it comes down to things like, we'll bring our viewpoint and all these things, but of course the new Ireland that we're trying to build isn't just for us, it's for all of us who share the island. So you have to come to the table with your view, but be able to have the conversation around what's the common ground, what can we build, what can we better. So if I was laying out a pathway to unity, I think we have to start, or firstly recognize that the conversation has already started. As I've said, we should encourage more people into that conversation. We need to not just talk to ourselves. So we're convinced, we're convinced of the merits of unity. We know that it'll be a better place for us all to be, but there are many people out there that are yet to be convinced, or equally there are people who are open to being convinced, and there might be people who have a complete closed mind to it at this moment in time. You have to embrace all of that, because you have to debate it, you have to converse about it, and certainly we want to do that. So I think the fact that the conversation started is a really, really healthy thing. I think we have to give assurances. We have to say and mean what we say whenever we say the island we want to build is for everybody. So I have no desire to repeat the history of discrimination, sectarianism, everything that happened to the nationalist Catholic people here. I do not wish that for any single person. So we need to be saying things about how we can build something better. So how does Irish identity and British identity live side by side, healthily, happily, contently, being very respectful of each other and our identities. And I think that's a key thing for us in terms of going forward. So a respectful debate about all of those things. It's also about, it's not just about territorial reunification. It's not just about joining north to the south. So we all have to have that vision about, what can it look like? And, the things I was saying earlier about, it has to mean something to a young person at 18 years of age who's thinking about their future, and it has to mean something to everybody. So I think we have to have those kind of conversations. But the good thing is that the future is in the hands of the people, and it will be them who will be taking these decisions, and it will be them that will have an input into all this. But that's why we think, crucially, that the Citizens' Assembly is really, really important, because we need, the Irish government has a constitutional imperative to plan and to make sure we do the preparation. So we're asking them to convene the Citizens' Assembly. And then just finally on that, there's far more, I always say there's far more that unites us than divides us. So what's the common ground? And I think you shouldn't start with maybe the more contentious things or the more sensitive things. You should always start the debate with what's our common ground, and let's build out from there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those thoughts there. And it leads us to the next idea here for many of the folks on the call. Many want to know what it is we can do to aid Irish unity, that work. You talked about the citizens' assemblies as an essential next step for the Irish government to begin. Margaret Goodwin, Phil Height, Kellyanne Shaughnessy, many folks wrote in specifically saying, what more can I do, and what can I do from here? What thoughts do you have there?
You're here tonight. That's the first step. Being here, listening, engaging, asking questions, offering commentary is all very, very important. Whenever we secure the unity referendum, we want to win it. we know we won't do that by ourselves. So we need as much support as we can, both in Ireland and also in the United States and elsewhere. Internationally, we want support for Irish unity. It is the natural outworking of the Good Friday Agreement. It is exactly what we signed up to. So I suppose it's about keeping informed. I think most people in the call have signed up to our newsletters. So that's important because you're getting the information directly from ourselves. We've got our social media, the newsletters that have said. I think it's about trying to bring more people on board. So I'm sure plenty of people on the call have friends who are maybe curious or interested, and even getting them to sign up to the newsletter to hear what we have to say. You're continually building the network of support for Irish unity. And I think that would be probably the biggest thing that I would ask. Then also you all have your own locally elected political representatives that you also have a voice and an ability to try to steer or at least to influence. So I would ask you to use those contacts that you have as well at local level, and ensure that the simple ask here is protect the Good Friday Agreement, because everything flows from it. So if you were all asking your representatives to make that part of their commitment to the electorate, then I think that's a really important thing, because then it goes right to the heart of the US administration as well. And then also, again, many of you be on different types of engagements, perhaps with Irish government or other political parties or all sorts of things. I'm sure there's all sorts of ways in which people can influence. So raising the issue at all those things, to speak loudly and confidently about all we want is the protection of the Good Friday Agreement, and it's natural outworking, is essentially, I think, Greg, what I would ask of people.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, so and a lot of that work is informing. Many of our local reps or national reps need to know, and staying connected to the information provided in the newsletter, and simply giving updates can be so helpful. It's not that there's an opposition, simply it's just not knowing. That can be extremely helpful in protecting the Good Friday Agreement. I appreciate that very much. We heard from some supporters who want to know a little bit more about your view on the current situation in Ukraine. Patricia McIver, John Bissett, they wrote in wanting to know, can you give us a little bit more about what's going on in Ukraine?
Yeah, as I said at the start, we're all watching on, and your heart breaks whenever you see the harrowing scenes of what's happening. And it's an affront to us all. It's an affront to the civilized world. There's no other way to cut it. And we have to be very mindful of the Ukrainian people and send our solidarity to them. We have been joining in the chorus of, the international response that's required. Here in Ireland, we've been asking for the expulsion of, Russian ambassadors. We've been asking for the support for refugees. We've been asking for humanitarian aid. Those things are all crucially important. This attempt by Putin to justify his actions, it's just an affront to us all, and we all have to step up, and we all have to play our part. And any of us who, as I said, who value freedom, who value sovereignty, our own right to self-determination, till a free people, all those things I think is in the mix. But I think everybody is quite horrified by what's happening right now, and we all watch very closely. But I have to say, I think that the response from the international world has been very strong. And I think that's something that obviously is crucially important, because Putin needs to hear it from every quarter, that there will be a kickback. And I just think we have to be prepared for everything in the time ahead, but very worrying times.
Thank you, Michelle, for your thoughts there. And also there in the comments there, Martin Burns dropping in the importance of making sure that our representatives are kept up to date and are informed about the importance of the Good Friday Agreement and all of the work happening to support all elements of that. I'd like to move now. Can we talk, you mentioned it earlier in your briefing at the top. Let's talk about elections. You're leading the polls in North and South. There's an election scheduled for May 5th. How is the campaign going, and what happens if Sinn Féin's returned as the largest party?
So as I said, it is quite exciting times despite all the challenges. So we will fight the election on Bobby Sands' anniversary, and on the 5th of May, and we will go to the polls with a very strong, confident, forward-looking message. Our message will be about unity. It will be about health, housing, jobs. It will be about, as I said, the things that matter to people. But I think that the public here absolutely understand the significance of the election, given that it is a game changer election, given that it will potentially for the first time ever return a Republican First Minister. So I think that in itself is hugely significant, and it's not lost on the wider public here. And what we have increasingly as we move towards the election, we have those within unionism that are saying that they will refuse to serve or won't confirm if they will serve alongside a Sinn Féin First Minister. We also have alongside that a number of people from the unionist community background commentating and offering a sentiment like nationalists need not apply. Do you know, like those uppity nationalists, who do they think they are? They're lawyers, they're judges, they're taking on positions of responsibility because of their merit, of course, for no other reason. They have got there with hard work. So there's a sentiment out there nearly that nationalists need not apply. So for me, this election is about change. It is about change for the right reasons. It is about, it's about the outworking of democracy. It's the outworking of the Good Friday Agreement. So we're quite excited by the election, but we don't take anything for granted. Greg, we will work very hard, and we'll do everything we can. And of course, it's also not lost on the wider public that whilst we're fighting an election in the north on the 5th of May, and we are potentially within touch and distance of being the First Minister, equally potentially in the south of Ireland at some stage there will be election, and as Sinn Féin lead the opposition and Mary Lou McDonald leads the opposition, you potentially have a first female Taoiseach also there. So the change, the decade of opportunity, it's all there in front of us.
Quite exciting, to say that. It's very, very exciting times. We have some folks writing in with some questions about the idea of modern Irish republicanism. So the Sinn Féin president wished the British Queen well recently. You met with the Queen. How does that fit in with the idea of modern Irish Republicans?
I think very well, to be honest. I mean, we don't have to be supporters of the monarchy. It's not our thing, obviously, as Republicans. But it is important to those of our British identity. So in building the modern, new, inclusive Ireland, then we have to actually practice what we preach. So it's about being respectful to your neighbour. And I think it's really, really important that we do that. So it is the British Queen's Jubilee. Mary Lou McDonald wished her well. I equally did so. And I think it's just the right thing to do in today's world. As I said earlier, if we're going to build an Ireland where those of us of an Irish identity and a British identity live side by side, then the best thing we can do is to be kind and to be neighbourly and to be respectful of each other. And that's the type of Ireland that we want to achieve. So that's why we offered up those words just in advance of the Queen's Jubilee.
Thank you for that. An inclusive and diverse Ireland, home to all, is a future we can all feel inspired to continue to work for. We had a question from the chat. Chris O'Neill was curious about any advice you would give Americans interested in investment, right? So as there is the growing number of voices and economic analysts and people from all new corners saying, whoa, this makes more sense as one unit, one island. Let's move forward in that way. What advice might you have to folks looking for information or ideas about that sort of investment?
Yeah, and there's huge opportunity, Chris. So I mean, I very much welcome your question. I had hoped to be in the United States talking about trade, talking about opportunities, talking about or trying to attract investment. But obviously with the DP walking away and the executive collapsing, then we haven't had that opportunity to do so. But myself and Mary Lou will be out in we'll be in New York, we'll be in Washington over the next number of weeks. And we want to talk about all of these things. I mean, there are huge opportunities. We have and like even in terms of the north, we have an executive East Coast advisor and West Coast advisor, and that's all targeted around how we can increase investment. So if Chris would like to make contact, Greg, through yourself afterwards, then we soon put you in touch with the right people to speak to. We have a strong view ourselves for the economy, what we would do in terms of economic development, and certainly we'll be more than happy to have that conversation with Chris as well.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I know we know that you are extraordinarily busy, and we are beyond grateful for your time with us this evening or morning for some of us here. We have clear next steps with the James Connolly group there, with reaching out to folks for your upcoming visit, as well as staying involved. Is there any closing remarks you'd like to leave us with before we begin to wrap it up?
No, just again, thanks to everybody for coming on. I take on board some of the points. Peggy, we won't be in Southern California this trip, but believe me, we will get there eventually. And I like the third coast, Texas, from Chris. So I hear you. That's where we want to be. We want to be leading the way in terms of leading trade missions, being out, talking, making friends, making new friends, attracting investment. We have so much that the bond between Ireland and America is so strong, and that's going to continue, forever and a day. So as I say, it's been a tough couple of years with COVID. The pandemic's just been challenging. We haven't been able to travel. We haven't been able to do the things that we wanted to do. But this show is about to get on the road again, and myself and Mary Lou we'll kick that off again in the next couple of weeks for St. Patrick's. And I look forward to maybe seeing some of you throughout that trip, but certainly in the years ahead. This is the most exciting time that in history of Ireland since the partition of this country over 100 years ago. There has never been a time where we have been closer to reaching our goal again of uniting this country. Never been a time. The conversation is so immense right now. It's all to play for. It just takes hard work. It takes us all to do it. It takes plenty of partners. It takes all of our friends. But we can do this. We can definitely do this. I'm enthused. Mary Lou's enthused. Our activist base here in Ireland's enthused. We are going from strength to strength. It is all in front of us. So with your continued support, and we'll keep you informed just in terms of asks and whenever we need support and certain things. But folks, thanks so much for coming on the call tonight, and I really, really appreciate it. Mind yourselves.
Thank you, Michelle. We will see you soon. Have a safe trip and good luck. Farewell. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.